We today are going to finish a long series we've been on the subject of faith, and really what we do in a series is we kind of take one topic and we talk about it for so long you're sick of looking at the graphic and hearing about it. So today is the end of this whole series. We talk about faith a little bit. We've been camping out in the book of James. James was the half-brother to Jesus. James wrote a letter to a church that had people in it just like you, just like me. He's writing primarily to Christians. But the principles that he shares in this letter, we can put to work in all of our lives. They really apply to all of us in this place today. And so today we're going to finish this series. Next week we're going to start a whole brand new series. On my heart is to share with you the miracles that Jesus performed, how they apply to our lives. So we're going to start a brand new series with you next week. If you're inviting friends, if you're just camping out, whatever the case is, next Sunday would be a great Sunday to start. If you're watching at home or watching online, we're so glad that you're here. People watch us Sunday by Sunday all the way from Crosby, Culbertson, Stanley, Powers Lake. If you're watching, thank you so much. And I get this once in a while. This is fun. You go in a store and people say, "Hey, I see you on TV. We watch you right before we go to our own church." It's great. So anyway, we're glad that you're watching, though. Thank you for tuning in. And so we're going to end on the book of James today, really talking about something that all of us experience, an emotion that all of us experience. And we see this emotion played out for us oftentimes in a grocery store. We've all been to the checkout lane. And there in front of us is a parent, and we just feel for the parent because that parent brought their children shopping today, and all parents just know what a catastrophe that can sometimes be, right? And so we're standing in the line, and there is in front of us a parent with their child, and their child is not getting what that child wanted, and that child is having a meltdown in the aisle. They're laying on the floor, they're screaming as if somebody is stabbing them with a knife. They're just screaming bloody murder, and the whole store, and we're just looking at the magazines, just pretending like we don't know any of this is going on. Or maybe you are the parent that brought that child to the store. We feel bad for you. And as parent, as a grown-up, we look at that child just throwing this, we call it a temper tantrum, a hissy fit, whatever it might be. And we all just, in our mind, we're thinking, well, if I was that parent, I know what I'd do. Take him out shooting. I shoot him. I don't know. We take him out hunting. The only one come. If I was that kid, boy, my parents would never let me get. We've all thought this kind of stuff. And as an adult, we think I would never act like that. No. Because as adults, we've learned to act that way, but to do it so sophisticated that nobody knows we're acting like that, right? We just learn how to work the system because we've all felt this emotion. We'd never lay on the floor and kick and scream and have a tantrum and that kind of thing, but let's just be honest. Somebody got recognition that you didn't get and you were mad about it. Somebody got the promotion or the raise that you think you should have gotten. You got mad about it. Somebody made a change to the schedule. They took your TV show off. They changed it to a different channel. You got mad about that whole kind of thing, right? She is wearing the dress to church today that you tried on, but you didn't look. So you're mad about that whole thing and that whole thing. And he's pulling in the parking lot, driving the car you think you should be driving. And they made a change to your schedule. They made you wait. They didn't call you back. And there was this emotion that rose up on the inside of you. And let's just be honest, the issue isn't usually the issue, is it? The issue isn't the issue. In other words, we can say, well, they never called me back, or they made me wait, or they changed this. Remember, James is going to write to this very thing, and he's writing to a church. And sometimes the church makes changes. Now, I wouldn't make that change. All these emotions rise up on the inside of us. And we don't throw a temper tantrum, but we deal with it more sophisticatedly than a child does. And James addresses this. So as I read to you, understand that the audience to which James is writing are Christians, all right? Did you know that even in church, sometimes Christians fight and quarrel? Did you know that? Don't know if you knew that or not, but it happens. So James chapter 4, if you brought a Bible, you brought a device, you want to follow along, I'll put the scriptures up here for you. As you follow along, we're going to read about an emotion that all of us feel and how to deal with it and how we should handle with it. Because remember, as James addresses faith, James says this about faith. Faith is practical. It's not what you believe. It's not about what you think. It's practical. It's how you live out your life. And so he says, if you want to live a practical faith, let me address another tender issue in all of your lives, because faith is like paint. It's only useful when applied, right? So we want to make this extremely, extremely practical. So James just drops the bomb right away in James chapter 4, beginning in verse number 1, when he asks this question: what is causing the quarrels and the fights amongst you? Remember, he's not writing to a bar. He's writing to a church, all right? He's not writing to kids in their bedroom. He's writing to a church. And I wonder the first time the people heard this letter being read, they're thinking, well, James is like hundreds of miles from here. How does he know? James knew human character. And he's writing to Christians. And even Christians have fights and quarrels amongst them. You left the church because there was fighting and quarreling in the church. You left some place because of all the fighting and the quarreling. But he's talking to Christians again. So he just right away says, well, what's causing the fights and the quarrels? And then fortunately for us, this is why I love reading the Bible. If you have a question about something you've read, oftentimes the answers you're looking for are found right there in the Bible, as is the case in James chapter 4, beginning of verse 1. He goes on to say, here's where they come from. Don't they come from the evil desires at war within you? Wait. I'm a Christian. There's no evil desires at war. Oh, yeah, there is. You just don't know they're there until they're pressured, until they're challenged, until somebody asks you to do something, or you're told no. Then all of a sudden the war starts to kind of come to the surface, doesn't it? And it's the evil desires, and this is the incredible thing, writing to Christians, the evil desires that wage war within us. The word desire there in the original Greek that James wrote it in comes from the word that we get the word hedonism from. It is this base desire inside of you. It's wrong. It's evil. I know I shouldn't feel this way. I shouldn't want this. It's totally wrong, but I don't care. I want my way anyway. And James says, well, that's where the source of the problems are in your life. You wanted the promotion. You didn't get the promotion. You wanted him. You didn't get him. You wanted her. You didn't get her. And that's the source. And so as a result, you're an angry person. You're a depressed person. You're a moody person. How many of you know a moody person? All parents of teenagers know moody people. I'm just saying, all right? So we know moody people. And here's the thing. We could blame somebody else. We could blame somebody else for our anger. We could blame somebody else for our depression or our moodiness. But blame doesn't fix the problem. You can blame all that you want. The fact is you want something and you're not getting it. And all blame does is put the responsibility on somebody else for your emotions, and it brings the past into your present. As parents, it's so easy for us to recognize this in children. I mean, it's obvious to us when we're standing at the grocery store and this child is throwing a temper tantrum right there in the checkout aisle. It's an embarrassment to everybody standing around, and we're all uncomfortable with this whole thing. As parents, as grown-ups, we know what the problem is. But the children don't. No child, I've never seen the child at one of the marts stand up and say, I think I know I am throwing a tantrum. I'm just not getting my way. I mean, they don't recognize that. You want to get down on one knee and say, Sonny, here's why you're having this inner turmoil. Let me tell you, it's a spiritual issue inside of your heart. It's a war waging. You want this candy bar, but you're not getting it. That's why you're throwing it. And we don't do that kind of thing. We recognize it in others, but we don't recognize it in ourselves. And God looks at us and he says, look, this is not a matter about being fair or unfair. Let's just be honest. You want something. You want something. And you're not getting it. You wanted to buy it. You wanted to get it. You wanted to have him. You wanted to have her. You wanted that relationship. You wanted that possession. You wanted that accomplishment. You wanted that notoriety. You wanted that affirmation. And you didn't get it. So you're angry about it. And once you own the source of your dissension on the inside of you, you no longer have a story to tell, because as long as we can blame somebody else, we've got a story to tell. Well, you know what happened? They got a new boss, new policy, they changed this, they changed that. We could tell the story, and it wasn't our fault. It was somebody else's fault. We can pass on the buck. We can pass on the blame. And blame just brings the past into the present. It doesn't fix anything. So now, if we haven't felt uncomfortable enough about all of this, James goes on and he drills a little deeper. Verse number 2, follow along. You want what you don't have, so you scheme and you kill to get it. Now, wait. He's writing to Christians here. None of us have ever killed to get some. I hope none of you have killed somebody to get something. If you are, you're in the wrong place maybe right now. But we've schemed, haven't we? We've schemed. Let's just be honest. We can get what we want. We've got a motivation, and we've got an angle, and we know how to manipulate and to leverage power and authority. We do it all the time to get what we want, because we know what we want. And what we want, when it's challenged, when it's taken away from us, when it starts moving away from our desires and our goals, all of a sudden we start to put this plan of action. How can I change the environment and the outcome so that I can get my way? That's what James says. He goes on to say, you're jealous of what others have, but you can't get it. So you fight and you wage war to take away what they have from them. if I could just have it, if I could just get it, then I would be happy and I would be content. That's inside of you, it's inside of me. If I could just have it, if I could just have my way, if I could just get something, then I would be happy, I would be fulfilled, and I would be content. Let me ask you this. What makes you happy? I know the answer to the question. What makes you happy? The answer is nothing. Nothing will make you happy. You know what people do? People try to get into a relationship to be happy. People go to the store and they buy something to make them happy. If you weren't happy before you got it, you're not going to be happy after you get it. Let's just be honest. It satisfies for a little while. It's a little euphoric. You spent some money. You got something. And it kind of makes you feel good for a little while. But then after a while, those feelings of anger and depression and moodiness and dissatisfaction and discontentment, they just rise back up inside of you again. Happy people are people that are at peace with God, at peace with themselves, and at peace with other people. Nobody on their deathbed says, hey, one more time. Could you please open my closet so I can see all the things I bought for myself to wear? Nobody ever says, hey, just bring in my coin collection one more time. I want to take one more look at that. See, nothing makes you happy. What makes you happy are the relationships that you have with God and with people. We want something just to satisfy this appetite inside of you and inside of me. We think this, if I feed the appetite, I'll satisfy the appetite. If I just feed the appetite, I can satisfy the appetite. If it's an appetite for food, an appetite for power, if it's an appetite for affirmation and acceptance, whatever the appetite is about, it's an appetite for relationship, to be loved, to love. There's an appetite, and if I can just feed the appetite, if I just get it and have it, I'll satisfy the appetite. But here's what I know about appetites. The more you feed it, you just increase the capacity for that appetite. That's all you do. The more you feed it, the worse it gets. You just create a bigger problem for yourself. Gluttons think about food just as much as people who are starving think about food. It just doesn't satisfy. But this deception that we all face and feel on the inside of our hearts is, if I just satisfy this, I'll feel better. We think if I can just get enough of something, I'll have enough of something. James says, no, not true. Doesn't work that way. So you're still going to blame to somebody else for your unhappiness. And so oftentimes what people do is they try to squeeze the happiness out of somebody else to make themselves feel happy. People in marriages do it. If you enter into a marriage and you're not a happy person before you enter into marriage, you'll squeeze the happiness out of your spouse. If you're not a happy parent, you'll try to squeeze the happiness out of your kids. If you're not a happy kid, you try to squeeze the happiness out of somebody that you're a friend with. So it just bears then the question, who in our life do we make feel responsible for our unhappiness? If you would just stop and say, you know what I think the source of our marital tensions are? I think I'm trying to squeeze happiness out of you because there's something unsatisfied in me, and I'm trying to satisfy it with you. To which your spouse will go, you finally get it. Yeah, you're right. So James continues on with this whole topic. We try to squeeze the life out of somebody. Now, James shows us why we don't have what we want. We all want something. All of us in this room today want something. We want it. If you're a teenager and you want something, I want an iPhone 6S. I want a car. I want. As an adult, we want a lot of the same things we wanted when we were kids. We just want. James says, well, look, you've gone to the wrong source. You've gone to the wrong source to get the things that you want. So he camps out on this. Look at verse number 2. Look, you don't have what you want because you don't ask God for it. And I think I know why we don't ask God for it. There's a couple of reasons, and James is going to answer it for us here for a little bit. One of the reasons is, as soon as we start to admit what it is that we want from God, we have to hear ourselves say it. And we'll realize how ridiculous our request is. How many of you have ever prayed a prayer and God didn't answer the prayer, and then you look back and go, oh, thank you, God, that she said no. I mean, we've all been thankful that God didn't answer some of our prayers, right? And sometimes we pray and ask God for things. We really have to verbalize it. We don't verbalize it because we know it's ridiculous. We know it's wrong. We know our motives are wrong. We shouldn't be asking for this kind of a thing. So we just don't ask. Instead, we scheme. We plot. We plan to try to get our way instead of going to God. I think Another reason we don't go to God is for what he says in verse number 3. Look what he says in verse 3. Even when you do ask, you don't get it because your motives are all wrong. Well, who, me? I'm a Christian. I'm a follower of Jesus. I don't have wrong motives. Oh, yeah, you do. Because he goes on to say, you want only what will give you pleasure. You're not thinking about the family. You're not thinking about the business. You're not thinking about your parents. You're just thinking about yourself, which comes so natural. That's why I love selfishness. It's easy, right? Nobody has to coach me on how to be selfish. I don't have to go to school to learn how to be selfish. I don't have to read books on how to be selfish. It's just in me to be selfish. And let's just be honest, one of the reasons I don't ask God is because as soon as I ask God for whatever it is that I want in my life, I'm going to realize that I'm selfish. And so we just don't even pray about it. But what we do is justify our desires. We justify what we think is a need in our life. And so James addresses that. It would just be revolutionary, I think, if we would just admit that, yeah, you know what? I'm just going to be honest here. What I'm asking for is purely selfish. I'm not thinking about anybody else. Wouldn't that be just amazing if we would say that in prayer? God, this is kind of dumb to ask for this in prayer. I really wanted the recognition or the promotion or the affirmation or the new car. I mean, I really wanted this. And you probably think it's dumb, but this is the way I feel. And God would say, I love hearing your transparency and honesty. I already know this about you. And there's probably somebody in your life, though, that feels responsible for your unhappiness. They just feel squeezed. If you want to grow spiritually, let me encourage you with this. Have the courage to say to your spouse, if you're in a marriage situation, have the courage to say to your spouse, you know what, honey? I think I realize why I'm such a jerk. I thought you were the problem. It's not you at all. It's me. And your wife would go, 27 years, finally, you get it, right? What if in mid-argument, you just stopped in mid-argument and said, you know what, I think I know the source of this argument we're having right now. I want my own way, right? I just want my own way. Students, if you're fighting with your parents and having an argument with them, just freak them out. Just freak them out. Stop right in the middle of the argument and go, look, the reason we're having this heated discussion and I'm raising my voice and I think you're an idiot right now is because I want my way. And your parents go, whoa, are you the same kid I gave birth to? I mean, like, right. Instead of asking God about what you want, you've just tried to solve all of these things on your own and try to fill it your own way. You know what? People will manipulate their way into a marriage. They'll manipulate their way into a relationship. They'll manipulate their way into somebody's bed. They'll manipulate their way into debt. Because there's this thing inside of them that is unmet, unfulfilled, and unfilled. And we're trying to fix our own problems. And the incredible thing is, after we've tried to fill it with all of this stuff, we're still not filled. We're still not satisfied. We want our way. Don't change what I'm comfortable with. Because as soon as what you love, what you like, what's comfortable to you, what's acceptable to you, as soon as that is challenged, there's this thing inside of you and inside of me that wants to change it back to the way that you want it. And naturally, because what you want is the right thing to want, and everybody should just want what you want, and everybody would get along a lot better, wouldn't they? Well, that's pretty much the way we feel. So what we try to do is make ourselves the source of our contentment and our peace. But what if God became the center and the source of your fulfillment? What if you said, God, this is what I long for, and this is really what I need. I'm really struggling right now. And I just need to come to you and say, God, I'm frustrated right now because they're making some changes at work, they're making changes at church, there's some things happening in the marriage and in the home, and this is happening, going on and on and on, and saying, God, you know what? I've tried to make all of these things my source of peace and security. That's stability for me. But God, you got to be my stability. What if we started asking God for the things that we really want? Now, here's what I know about parents. Parents, you go back to the store with me, and your children say, "Can I get this? Can I get this? No. Can I get this?" And they don't even have to finish the sentence. Can I? No. No. And they just open their, no. You just look, no. And then there's that one time there's something inside of you and it's something inside of me as a parent that the timing is right. the conditions are right, the attitude is right, and your child asks and you say, go ahead, put it in the cart. What if when we approached God and asked for things, and sometimes God says no, because God needs to say no, because God knows what's best for us, and he knows the timing, and he knows the conditions. But then there's at one time God says, okay, all right. And I think God will sometimes, because one last verse I'd like to look at is found in the same letter that James wrote, but it's at the beginning, James chapter 1, verse number 17. Look what James writes. Whatever is good and perfect is a gift coming down to us from God, our Father. Isn't that what we all want? We all want good gifts and perfect gifts. We all want this thing in you and in me that makes me feel at peace, fulfilled, content, and satisfied. And James seems to indicate here that comes from God, because God knows what we want. And you know what? You can walk through a lot of difficult times when you realize the source of your happiness and fulfillment doesn't come from stuff or people or your marriage or your kids or your job or the award on the wall or recognition. Your source of happiness comes from your relationship with God. Let me ask you this. Who in your life are you making to feel responsible for your happiness? Because here's what I know. When we start shifting the blame to somebody else to make them feel responsible for your happiness, the whole house has tension in it. Because everybody's wondering what's going to set dad off, what's going to set mom off, what's going to make her all moody, you know? And so everybody's afraid of what to say and what to do because they're just afraid. And there's no security in that. What if you just got down with your family and said, you know what, I'm so sorry, I realize the tension that we feel in the home. I realize why we had the fight in the car on the way to church or the arguing about whatever is I wanted my way and I didn't get it. And so I made you feel responsible for my happiness. That would revolutionize a marriage, wouldn't it? Honey, I'm so sorry. I've just put all the pressure on you to be the provider, and I've wanted this, and I've wanted that, and I've wanted to get a new one, and new this, and and I've just made you feel so inadequate because you can't do all that. You know what? The problem isn't with the job that you have. The problem is I'm scared. I'm insecure, and I'm unsatisfied. And I'm just being totally honest. And your husband would go, thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry for the way I've treated you. It's not your problem. It's my problem. And so, what are we supposed to do with this? I kind of debated with what to do with this. I read a little bit more down the letter. I could have preached probably a lot more verses to you, but I'm not even going to have the verse up here before you. But if you want to look at verse number 8, if you brought your device or whatever, here's where the source of our problems, and then we're going to end. James says this: if you want the satisfaction, the peace, the fulfillment, so that you have the things that you really want, here's what you need to do. But it does not come natural to any of us. Verse number 8 says, draw near to God, and he'll draw near to you. It's a fact and it's a reality. It's just the way things work. When you draw near to God, he'll draw near to you. And then he goes on to say a little bit more, some kind of uncomfortable things in that thing. And he's writing to Christians. He said, wash your hands, you sinners. Purify your hearts. And then the last thing he says is really so telling. He said, your loyalties are divided. And I think that's why we have the problems that we have. Isn't it true that when our lives start to move more towards God, we feel more peace? And isn't it true that when we start to move more towards our own wants and selfish ambitions and desires and move away from God, that we feel more discontentment and satisfaction and have more problems in our life? Isn't that true? Is that usually the way it goes? And so James just simply says, look, draw near to God, and he'll draw near to you. It's almost as basic and simple as like the law of gravity. If you throw something up in the air, it's going to come back down again. If you draw near to God, he's going to draw near to you. What if we stopped in mid-argument with people and said, you know what, I'm just not getting my way right now, and that's why I'm feeling emotional and mad and upset with you. So let's just find out, why don't we just step away from this tension right now and let's just pray and say, God, what do you think we should do? Wouldn't that be an amazing argument stopper in your car. Just slam on the brakes, pull off to the side. Kids, we're going to pray right now. What? No. What happened to my dad? James makes this appeal to the church, to Christians. And if people or things or power or recognition are the source of your fulfillment, you'll always be unfulfilled. If something other than God is your source of fulfillment, you'll always be unfulfilled. So then, that just goes back to the place where then our source of fulfillment and contentment, so that we don't have fights and arguments over not getting our way, has to be back to God again.